the first component which we'll be looking at will be the typography. So what is the typography? So as the name suggests, the typography is used to add the text onto the web page. So this is as simple as that. So it is just used to add the text layout onto the web page with some various styles, and it has some different type of text based text also, like the heading text, paragraph, etc. So we can just specify the text like the h1, h2, h3 and the paragraph and more text based text of the HTML. So this is all about the typography that we can use. And now we can just move on to the material UI. So we have a website, and then we can just move on to the search, select the typography from there. So if you will just move on to the typography, so then you will see use typography to present your design and content as clearly, efficiently as possible. So now you will see there are some predefined styles onto that, and then you can see we have some components. So you can just provide the component as well of the material UI. And then if you will just learn about this, like the typographic component makes it easy to apply a default set of font weights and the sizes in your application. And then you will see these are the text based text which we can use, like the h1 till the h6, and then you will see we have the body, we have all of the text like this, and then we have a theme, and then we have the changing the semantic element. So if you want to learn about this, so you can just read this typography block from there, but now we will directly use that. So for that we can just move on to the application, and then we can just select here the source, and then we can just select a component, like it will be the test. So it will be test.js, and then I will add a default layout of the component with the RAFCE. So it is just an import statement from the React, and then we have the const test, which is a default application function, and then we have a return statement with the JSX, and then we have a export default as the test. So now we will use the material UI. So we need to import something from the material UI. So import from @MUI material, and it will be the typography that we are using. So we need to import the typography from there, and then we can just render the typography. So inside this div I will add a typography here, and then inside the typography now we can add some text, like it will be the hello world, and then we can just save, and then we can just call the test component inside the app. So we can just call here the test. So it is now imported, and now we can just save. So if I will now save, and if I will now just move on to the application once again, so the React tab is now compiled, and now we can see the hello world onto the web page. So if you will just move on to the inspect and move on to the console in the developer tools, and then you can just select any element from there like the hello world, then you can see now we have the class of the MUI typography, and now you can see the typography is clearly visible inside that, and now all of the things are now working quite fine. So this is the typography, and you can just set some spacings and the styling from the Chrome developer tools also. So you can just select from there as well. And now we can just move on to the test.js. So we can just move on to this, and then we can just close every other file from there. So if you will just move on to the typography, and then you will just press the control and the space, then you will see all of the props which it accepts. So these are about the props. Then you can just select the align property, like you can see the align has the right, left, inherit and the center, and then you can just set about, which will be the strings. So all of these props are acceptable into the typography. And then if I will now move on to the PPT, that about some properties of the typography. So now you can see the first property is the variant, which is very important. So it is used to define the HTML tag. Like in this line, we have a different type of text based text, like the heading and the paragraph and much more. So we can just select all of these text from this variant prop. So we can just move on to the material UI inside the typography. We can just add a variant, and then if you will just control space once again, then you can see all of the tags will be now available, like the h1, body, caption, even the button, even the subtitle, and all of the text. So if I will now just add here as the h1, if I will now just save, now you can see, if I will now move on to the application, now you will see the hello world size has been increased, because now it is acting like a h1 tag was the heading. And if I will now just go, if I will now change to the h6, now you can see the heading size will be now decreased to the main size. And then you can just select all of the other elements as well, like you can just select here the button as well. So then you will see it will be the button text which is available only inside the buttons, and then you can just select every other tag like this. So now we have the variant property, which we can define as the h5 for now. And now the variant has been defined, and now we can just move on and see other properties inside the typography. And it has some other properties like additional CSS properties, like the font weight, margin, etc. So it has the bunch of other CSS properties as well, like you can just define here the font weight as well, like it will the font family, font size, font weight. Even it has the flex property, you can just add a display also from there. So it accepts all of the other HTML tags here. So if you want to see about that, so you can just move on to the React typographic component and you can just select the typography API from there, and then you can just see which tags it accepts. Like you can see the name, it has a align, it has a children, it has a classes, it has a component. So you can just give another component to this typography as well. So the design will be applied of the typography and the component will be the component which you will just assign. Then you will see all of these text and then you can just see about that. And then we have defined the variant, which is the most important property. And then you can see now we have the SX prop also. So what is this SX? So the SX prop is used to define some CSS styles. So the SX prop contains all the CSS properties which are not available or which are available inside the typography props as well. So in the SX prop, we can just define, like we can just define the color. So the color can be like the, we can just define as the red. So if I will now save, so the application will be then compiled, and then you will see the text color is now changed to the red. And then you can just define any other property, like you can define the border as well inside the SX. So most of the SX properties are available inside the typography props only, like the color. You can see the color will be available there, and then you can see the border will be also be available there. So almost all of the properties will be then available inside this only props, and then we can just define from there and from SX prop as well. So the border can be, we can just add a 1 pixels solid black, and then we can just add a border radius, and then border radius can be defined to 10. So if I will now save, so now you will see, now we have the typography. Now you can see, now we have the hello world, and now you can see the style is not looking good because we are not defining the responsive styles from there now. So this is all about the typography that we can use, and make sure you try out all of the other components as well if you want to just build your skills into the material UI. So let's wrap up this video. So now you have learned about the typography.